Everybody, sorry, we're running a little bit late today as technology and yeah, I'll blame technology on this. I'll take the but I take the responsibility for us running late here. Welcome to the episode of Motor City Metrics here at TigersMLReport.com. I'm Roy Hilliard alongside me is Uper and Chris. John is on date number 2. So
good man.
Good man, yeah. So that boy is good.
Now I told him this time he needs to spend a little money.
Yeah,
Arby's I was able to interrogate him the other night and find out he took her to a free event. That's a little sketch myself.
You know what, John or Uper? Well, technically his name is John, but Uper, I applauded the way you started the show. I was cracking up. It was well done, and I think everybody else liked it too. So, currently, right now, this has been a weird week around the state of Michigan. Obviously, with the weather, is it the fires in Quebec, correct?
I think all over Canada. I mean, east and west.
Okay. Yeah, it's a hazy shade of haze out there. And I was trying to be clever, but no one would get that reference. But
is it a hazy shade of winter, or what is it?
Hazy shade of summer, if you will.
So hazy shade of summer, that's right, yeah. And then there's the whiter shade of pale.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's a nice reference right there. Is that what band is that? Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter.
Procol Harum, I think.
Yeah, thank you. That is correct. But what's even stranger is the Tigers are heading to Colorado to play the Rockies, and there's ice on their field.
Yeah, there was hail, wasn't there?
Yeah,
quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's again, it's not a political show, but to say that global warming doesn't exist. Okay, right. So at any rate, a lot to get to today. As Spencer Torkelson had his first multi-homer game and drove in 4 runs today, as the Tigers were able to split the series against the Rangers and really kind of honestly probably surprised us a little bit. We're going to get into segments real quick too. I am leaving a little early. I have 9:30 softball, but again, depending on how the weather looks outside, it's supposed to rain out in Oak Park this evening. But yeah, today's win was a surprise. I'm not going to lie, especially with the way the bullpen has been performing. We saw Joey Wentz last night get called down. It's been a parade of arms from Toledo to Detroit. It's probably just it's a shuffle. It's just literally a assembly line worth of arms that have been not effective at all. Let's just be honest about it. Apparently, also, by the way, we're told today. I'm not getting into this too much, but apparently we're told we were homers on the Tiger Minor League report. I don't know who these two people were. Anyways, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, that was 100%. They were just trolling. There was nothing. They were yelling about Erie as a city, and somehow that Erie is bad at developing players or something like that, as though Erie acts independently of the entire organization. It was just they were clearly just trying to get a rise out of us for some reason, and it worked for a little while. Yeah. I said the F word on Twitter.
Yeah,
then I removed it.
Yeah, I would say I never see Chris go off on anybody on Twitter, but either way, the reason why I brought that up is because the homer that I was more bothered about those guys trolling whatever, but the homer comment get bent. You don't even pay attention then. But no, it was especially if you listen to Uper. You can listen to Uper for 2 minutes. Where does Uper get? He's a homer. Never. Come on.
Everybody knows I hate all the players that people love,
especially Spencer Torkelson, who had a good game today.
He had a great game. He had a great series overall. I'm not sure about his overall numbers, but it was great to see him do what he did, which was hit the ball hard to the pull field. Mm-hmm. Which, if he does that more often, then yeah, you could be talking 25, 30 home runs, because he does hit the ball hard. We've seen it all year. It's just been too often it's been on the ground to the pull field or hard in the air to center field or right field. And if he gets that aspect of his game going, then yeah, I think the Tigers have some, don't have to worry too much about first base for a little while.
The trajectory of all 3 of those homers was very low, which is interesting. It reminded me, and I'm not comparing the 2 players because he's got a long way to go, but those are kind of Yoenis Cespedes kind of home runs. Those low missiles that look like they're going to kill somebody in the outfield. So that was pretty. It was interesting to see. He also had another. I mean, you can talk about foul balls all day long. Who cares? But he hit one of those before that first homer this week that was maybe about 6 feet foul. So something he did really cranked up the power to the pull field like you're talking about.
Yes, and that was the second home run today was his only his second one off an off-speed pitch. So I mean, he in terms of how he's batting against off-speed pitches this year, it's an improvement from .093 last year to 132 heading into today. And no, and I agree with Vox here. Vox says in the chat, Dan Dickerson keeps saying that the five tool power is the last to develop, especially at the big level. I would agree with that because that's why you see that sometimes where that raw power tool number that comes up in scouting reports is kind of important to mention because you'll see the power come on a little later.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I guess guys do have to figure out how to get power, but when you talk about something like that, I think of more of someone like Parker Meadows, who is a skinny guy, tall, lanky, has to learn how to grow into his body and eventually get the power. Torkelson is basically a rock of muscle. He's other than some baby fat in his face. He's been that since he came into pro ball. But yeah, in his case, it's learning how to properly access his power, I guess, and that does take a while. But I would never call Torkelson a 5-tool player. I mean, he's 2 tools at best, I would think. Although he's a pretty good runner, actually, for
His
better
size.
than expected, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
2.5.
But
yeah.
But yeah, there's plenty to get to across the league too. And the All-Star voting results came in today. They named off the starters too. We're gonna dive some deeply into that, but because of the sake of time on my end, I do want to get in our segments quicker than normal because of that. And because there's also, I mean, this week across baseball, there's been some really interesting stories, especially last night with Domingo Germán throwing a no-hitter, a perfect game rather, but came at a strange angle. All right, it's time for Inside the Numbers. Uper, what is your number for this week?
Very simple numbers, 7 and 11. That goes to Spencer Torkelson. Those 2 homers today were his 6th and 7th of the month of June. We sometimes put a little bit too much stock in. He was good this month, he was bad that month, but they are just kind of natural places to mark the calendar of the baseball season. So for the month of June, he has 7 homers. At the beginning of the month, John and I were talking. Just said, if he had a great month of May, but if he could just up the home run production to about 6, that would be something that we could take some heart in. Well, he got to 7, so that's kind of nice. But it was mixed in with kind of a pretty iffy month overall. But, with the 7 homers, he's got 11 extra base hits. I think his OPS for the month of June is about 770, right in that ballpark. Which, if that's going to be a terrible month, that ain't bad. So he just had that long, 4 for 48 or something. It got ugly there for about a week. But, I think we're seeing some steps forward. And again, I'm going to judge this season in its totality more than its little week-to-week progressions.
All right, Chris, what's yours?
So mine is negative 9.9, and this is where I'm a Tigers homer. This is the drop in barrel rate over the last 2 years for Javier Baez. That is the biggest drop of any qualified hitter in baseball over the last 2 seasons. And a reminder that barrels, of course, are the best thing a hitter can do. They're the ideal combination of exit velocity and launch angle. And in 2021, Baez's barrel rate was 13.4%. Last year, it dropped to 8%. And this year, it's down to 3.4%. And I have no idea why, but it's just a gigantic bummer. We've talked about it before, but you could have told me 1,000 different outcomes for Javier Baez, and I wouldn't have picked that his strikeouts drop and he stops hitting for power entirely. That those two I never would have picked, and that's what's happened. And so yeah, that's a bummer. And more bummer, the number 2 drop in barrel rate over the last 2 years. It's 8%, and it's Ercas. So there you go.
Number 3 is Jonathan Scope.
Oh man, So my number is pretty simple. It's number 8, and that is the 8th consecutive season without the Tigers having a fan elected starter at the All-Star game. And usually, again, the All-Star game, from my experience as a fan, the Tigers fan, and just following the Tigers, the Tigers fans had it good from like 2008, 2013, 2014. It was a good run there for a while. Domination to a certain extent. But we're back to what I'm used to, which is I think all of us can. Uber, maybe not you so much, but I think Chris and I can use to little to no representation by the Tigers in the All-Star game. I mean, growing up in high school, it was whoever the token Tiger was, which was Tony Clark or Damian Easley, in my case, and that's the one I can remember. So
Henneman a couple times.
Yeah, Henneman because he was by default because he had the lowest ERA of any pitcher of the Tigers. All right, let's see here. Now we have three starters are 5.4. Henneman, 2.3. Yeah, okay, you're good. That's again, it's a byproduct of a lot of different things, but I know people are gonna say, well, it's the fans' vote. It's the same teams that always kind of do it. Here's a premise: just the Tigers have to play better, and people would vote for them. I guarantee. The thing is about this town is Detroit's a baseball town. It really is. It's a sports town. Period.
Mm-hmm.
When you're good, it reflects that. For example, Toronto doesn't. It doesn't matter what Toronto. Toronto can. It blows my mind. The Jays can struggle, but fans always come out and vote, no matter what. And same thing with even you look at some of the Angels. Of course, the two most popular Angels, Rangers are going to come out like that, but I'm not really. Again, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the Tigers or Detroit is a baseball town, and we see that when the Tigers are playing well or they're playing fun baseball, we get more people watching us.
Yes.
Just people are more interested. They're more excited. But I do think there's still a large degree of, like I said, like it's kind of a fair weather fan base who would agree. Right. It's unlike with the Lions, which they could prove they could lose every game and go on a 50-year cycle of terrible football, and people still watch just because it's football. But I do think there are hardcore baseball fans. There are more hardcore baseball fans in Detroit, I think, than there are, say, basketball or hockey fans. When there's still hardcore fans, but when the Red Wings and the Pistons go into the doldrums, I just I don't hear people talking about it at all, really. And people will still be like, hey, because baseball is just the sport in the summer, right? It's the one that you still kind of watch. So, yeah, Spain without the S, the pain. But yeah, I mean, it would help if the Tigers had some exciting players who were known nationally. They used to. They had, Miguel Cabrera. They had Justin Verlander, Curtis Granderson for a little while there. Like, some exciting. Max Scherzer, exciting, good players that were worthy of being on the All-Star team, and they just don't, and it's a bummer.
Yeah, it is what it is, and I think if Erod was healthy, I think he would have been there.
Mm-hmm.
But see, here's the thing about Luke that cracks me up. Luke will come in our chat and leave these great one-liners, and so here in chat he says, "Detroit is a baseball town. Chris Ilitch isn't aware of it." But to be fair, Chris Ilitch currently thinks it's football season.
well, maybe he's watching the Michigan Panthers or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Isn't that going on? You mentioned Erod, by the way. He pitched tonight for Toledo in Columbus, 4 1/3 innings. So he's pretty much back to what he's going to be doing. 3 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, no runs. That was 58 pitches. So nice. At that rate, maybe 1 more rehab start, maybe 2 if they're being super cautious. I think if they do 2, he'll be back the first game after the All-Star break.
Yeah, and they need all the good news they can get on the pitching front because Reese Olson went down with an injury today. And honestly, it was Chris McCaskey. Look, you can say what you want about Chris McCaskey, but as I've gotten to know him outside, as a person, there's one thing about him. He doesn't BS you. He's pretty much straightforward, and a lot of people don't like him. Whatever, I don't. That's your opinion. But one thing he said today that we couldn't help, and I retweeted it from the minor league account was, quote, Reese Olson is leaving the game. I got no words for this shit anymore. And it's true. I mean, look, the fact that they won today's game, the way they did, it says a lot about this team that I think you wouldn't have seen during the Ron Gardenhire era. I mean, Hinch has been able to mix and match the bullpen pretty well. And the bullpen gave him a standout performance today. And outside even, I know the ninth inning was a little shaky, but still, nevertheless, that was a game that I don't think the Tigers would have won a couple years ago. So I think Torkelson having a good game, but also at the same time, just getting those kind of performances from their bullpen is to me, they're just, even like, look at that from their first game against Texas into this game. The last two were, I mean, Wentz, again, when Wentz is using all 4 pitches, I think he's an effective pitcher, but everybody will tell me I'm an idiot, and that's fine. He got sent back to Toledo, so obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah,
I'm a Wentz fan too. I there are times when he looks very good, and then other times, like watching that start, it was like the Rangers knew exactly what he was going to throw and exactly where it would be. Like you could see his fastball would be tailing away from their bat, and still like, oh, barrel. Yeah, and there's been way too much of that from him this year. He's more talented than this, but I don't know. It's tough to say what his future is because he's had so many of these really rough outings that it's really hard to watch. And yeah, I mean the second game was a bummer because Manning pitched pretty well.
Yep.
You know, scoreless through 5 innings. You can't ask for a whole lot more than that. And then, but he just had some control issues, probably not fully stretched out. And then the bullpen in that one kind of collapsed a little bit, and we saw unfortunately that Anthony Miskowitz, we hardly knew ye. He had a Jay Spores level introduction and departure from the Tigers that we may remember 5-6 years from now, or we may forget forever. But
every ball was
but yeah,
a rocket.
to win 2 games and split a series against the best offense in the American League, I think best offense in baseball. I haven't looked. Let's see, how are they? That's the best offense in baseball. And you lose your starter in 2 of those games early, and you manage to win both those games. I think, I mean, you know, you don't have to feel good, but it feels better, like you're saying. It feels like something that probably wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah, definitely. It's just Texas is so good, so deep, and even I think their 7th hitter was just Enrique Duran.
Ezekiel Duran.
Yeah, he was giving the Tigers problems.
He might be my good tonight.
All right. Well, speaking of which, let's get into that real quick before I
Hey.
gotta get Okay, so what we just did was called a tease in the business. So, Chris, give us the bad, the ugly this week.
Yeah. So my good is Ezekiel Duran. Now, you know, Tigers fans are probably tired of them. But now that I don't think the Tigers play the Rangers again this year, so we can kind of sit back and go, hey, that's interesting. So, yeah, 24-year-old just turned 24. He went deep, 3 games in a row against the Tigers, I think. He's now hitting 326 with 12 home runs this year. He doesn't walk a lot. It's like a 4.5% walk rate, and his strikeouts are a little elevated. Not too bad, but it's like 25%. Not an ideal mix, but when you're hitting 326 with power, who cares? So his WRC plus right now is 158. He also, and this is randomly, I noticed this in StatCast earlier, he has the strongest throwing arm in baseball, according to Baseball Savant. He's at 97.6 miles per hour from left field, which is 6 miles an hour harder than the next closest left fielder.
Damn.
He came up as a shortstop / third baseman, and they're just playing him where they can. But yeah, that's a big arm. And it's a fun story because you know what? He signed for $10,000 with the Yankees. $10,000. Never a top 100 prospect, but he was part of the package that they sent Texas to get Joey Gallo, which of course did not work out so well for the Yankees.
No.
But the Rangers got Duran. They got Josh Smith, who played pretty well in the series, LSU kid, and they also got Glenn Otto. I don't know what's happened with him, but yeah, I mean we're having some discussions about what the Tigers need to do to get better, and I said everybody needs to be on the trade block. Because you know you got to find talent somehow, and the Rangers have done that in a number of ways. So I thought that was pretty cool. My bad is the Colorado Rockies pitching, which is not a shocker. You could probably say that for every segment, every week, every year. But over the last month, they've been particularly bad. It may be good news for the Tigers this week. I don't know. They're 8-19 with a 6.62 ERA over the last month. 277 hits and 113 walks in 233 innings. That's good for a whip of 1.67 for an entire month. So every inning, 1 2/3 of a batter are getting on base. They've given up 48 home runs in that same stretch of the last 30 days.
Oh, jeez.
And here, let's have some numbers here. Kyle Freeland, 0-3 with a 6.75 ERA in 32 innings. Connor Siebold, 0-2 with a 6.04 ERA. Austin Gomber, sounds like a Pac-Man villain or something. 1-3 with a 7.04 ERA. You got Chase Anderson, former Toledo Mud Hens great, 10.13 ERA. He made 5 starts last month. Dinelson Lamet, they released him, I believe, after he went 0-4 with a 10.8 ERA last month. So, yeah, the pitching not going so. Exactly. It's not great in Colorado right now, and you hope the Tigers can take advantage of that and maybe not have their pitchers blow up at the same time.
Oh, man.
And it's tough on Colorado. And my ugly this is kind of a strange one, but my ugly is their Domingo Germán perfect game. Which, no perfect game should ever be called ugly other than maybe like, the Jim Joyce mistake. But it should be a really great moment for baseball, right? One of these rare feats, except Domingo Germán has been suspended for domestic abuse before. So that's not great. He's also been suspended for illegal substances at least once, if not twice, I think, on the mound. Not.
I got a few names I like to call him.
But all that stuff. And of course, he threw a perfect game against a team that is actively putting out the worst product possible in order to force a move out of Oakland to Los Angeles. It's how could you not be romantic about baseball, huh? So
that cliche. I love that cliche. Oh man. That is
so that's my ugly.
Bad state of affairs there.
Yeah. Uper, what about you?
Okay. Well, my good, very simple. I mean, Shohei Ohtani. I mean, we talk about him periodically on the show, but he just always deserves more. 29 home runs now, 14 in the month of June. Just every single night there's a highlight. The other night he goes deep twice and strikes out 10 batters over 6 in the third inning. The dominance continues. It's just a joy to watch. The cool part about it is he's just such a happy warrior about the whole thing. It just seems like he's enjoying it and is being nice to everybody. It's really going to be very interesting to see where he goes and what that can do for the game if he ends up in the right market where he's always on TV with a relevant team, and if he can continue to perform at that level. Let's hope he can, because it would be a hell of a show, more than just watching the highlights from a West Coast game that everybody was in bed instead of watching. So we'll see how that goes this fall, if he moves this year, but then almost next year as well. My bad. No, this really isn't so much a bad, and it's gonna, it's easy to. A lot of people rip on Shepard on the Tiger broadcast. I'm not really ripping him on this one, but he said at the end of this game today that the Tigers salvaged a split, and I thought it was more that they achieved a split in this one. There's a subtle difference there, but Chris kind of got into where I was going to go, but I'll just talk about it anyway. I thought to go into Texas's house with that great offense that they have and the team that they're probably second, third best team in the American League, to go in there and get a split on 2 unexpected bullpen days really showed something. And the fact that this team is 35-45, and again, you always are what your record says you are, but this team is a bit more interesting than the typical teams that we've seen that's 10 games under 500. They're doing some things to keep our interest. They're winning some series here and there that you didn't really expect them to win. They go into first place Minnesota and win 3 out of 4, for instance. So today I just thought they played a really good defensive game. They came up with some power, and the bullpen did its job to keep it going until they leaked a little oil at the end. But it was a good series. It was really fun to watch. They sniffed around winning in game 2. They almost took 3 out of 4 in this one. So good job on the Tigers. And again, they achieved it. They didn't really salvage it, the split. My bad, go back to Shep. This is a personal pet peeve. Some people won't care, and that's fine. When Torkelson hit the first homer today, Shep comes at us with, he hit the fair pole. The fair pull. It is not a fair pull. It is the foul pull. It's been the foul pull for over 100 years. Stop it. He should have been. I put out a tweet that he should have been fired between innings. That was probably over the top, but still. And then
Do you
someone
remember what he?
Mr. Kaline always said fair pull. Well, screw him. That's what I got to say like that.
Yeah, he's not
Well,
a Hall of Fame outfielder, but
I think he called the next one a 3-run jam, which I've never heard before. Have you ever heard someone call a home run a jam? Which I guess I don't hate it too much. If he were to make that his thing, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
But it feels like he was just like he forgot that he wasn't at a basketball game or something.
honestly, that didn't bother me that much. Honestly,
No, it just was funny. I just never heard it before.
No, I've never heard that either. I'll go with 3-run jam over fair pull any day of the week, twice on Sunday. No problem. I like it.
So one of the things, Chris, you're making me think about that the Rockies and how bad they were. So I'm trying to find a span, in terms of like just the same span of for the Tigers, the 1996 Tigers, which by the way have the worst ERA of all time.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find
Where have you gone, Omar Oliveras?
Yeah. That who, by the way, was the quote unquote ace. And by the way, Harrison, thank you so much. By the way, we're gonna start a new rule on the super chat. If you donate, first and foremost, thank you for donating. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
But second, we're gonna wait till we all finish our talking points or whatever before we press something like this.
God. Such them all time.
For Harrison and
Exquisite.
so that way we don't interrupt the flow of the show, because I tend to I was listening to another podcast and they were like, oh, don't interrupt. But Joseph, thank you so much.
Let's get Shep saying 3-run jam every time.
3-run jam. See, 3-run jam, it rolls off the tongue pretty well. I like that. But
Not the worst thing he's ever said today.
So I was looking at, while you guys were doing that, I was using StatHead and I was trying to find in terms of a span of games. At one point, that 96 team we're talking here, the month of June, they had in ERA of, not kidding here, folks, there was a span of 5 games. Twice. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. I did read that wrong. Twice in the span of June, in 5 game spans, they had ERA above 9. Above 9. So they're historically bad. There's a super chat feature you can donate to, Doug, I think that should be in the YouTube part. So
Or just slide John a 20 or whatever.
yeah, slide John, yeah. So my good is Tyler Alexander. Now, Tyler Alexander is, honestly, to me, he's a Tiger that has 9 lives. Every time you say, oh, let's release Tyler Alexander, I never do. I always hold off, because he's one of those pitchers that gets better as the year goes on. In the month of June, Tyler Alexander has had a K per 9 of 9.53 and an ERA of 1.06 with a FIP of 3.39. That will play. And again, just going out there, he's had 2 outings this month where he allowed just 1 run. He has not allowed 2 runs or more since May 26th against the White Sox. So Tyler Alexander will continue to do that. It's just one of those things where when you think you can count him out, he's like, no, screw you. I'm going to show you. And he does. Each and every time. So props to Tyler Alexander. This is a guy who, by the way, 4 or 5 years ago, Chris remembers, I was very high on Tyler Alexander, and I still will be, damn it. That's one of those, I claim my stake on it. It was a 2nd round pick, and he's been serviceable, and he goes about it. He doesn't get a lot of attention, but quietly, again, just going out there and doing his thing, and he's put up some pretty impressive numbers. So
was that about 2014, 2nd round?
2015. He was actually, they took him in 2013 as well, and then signed him as a draft eligible sophomore and gave him extra money. He is the 4th best by WAR, the 4th best 2nd round pick in the Dombrowski Avila era. Behind Drew Smiley, James McCann, and Spencer Turnbull.
So my bad is the mock draft by the Athletic and Keith Law having Paul Skeens go at number 1. Not going to happen. I'm sorry. You know what? Look.
Ooh, I don't know.
I'm not. You know what? No, Uper. I'm going to say this right now. Unless I'm going to say this, it's part of my big splashing anyway. If the Pirates pick Paul Skeens at number 1, I'm going to belly flop in the pool at Chris's house July 9th. I'm going to do it. I'll wear a clown mask or something. I have my Lucha Libre mask right behind me, right over there. Okay.
Like
Greg,
it.
by the way, Greg Gagne of the Erie Seawolves wants me to wear that at some point. But I'm not
You
going
sure?
to because A, I have softball here in a few minutes, and B, sometimes it just Anyway, my point is simply this. It's not going to happen. All right. And the reason why it's bad is because you have a guy in Langford who had a fantastic College World Series.
Mhm.
LSU, who's on top of the world right now. You have Dylan Cruz, but you're going to go with a pitcher? Again, there's nothing wrong with it. Again, I understand. Linda Henning and I got in a discussion on Twitter about that. It was a very nice debate.
Sure.
But I just don't see this happening. The reason why I think it's bad is because I feel like we're selling a bill of goods here. That Keith Law knows a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless he knows something we don't know, but I don't see any other where it's stating that. So that's why I think it's bad. It's disingenuous.
I will say that he is not the only one floating that out there. Now every draft cycle has stuff like this where there'll be like a week where everybody's like, "Oh, it's going to be Max Clark," and like all the mocks say that. And I believe Pipeline moved Skeens to their number 1 player.
They did.
Yeah, moved Skeens to the number 1 player in the.
I'm doing the fan side one dropping tomorrow. I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not giving
No,
it.
I mean, I could see it just because he's good, and the Pirates probably could use him. All the teams could use him.
Mhm.
But yeah, it feels like we're in like this little pocket right now where everybody's like, "Oh, the Pirates are going to take Skeens," and you know, when the actual draft comes, we'll have all forgotten about this week where we all thought he was going number 1.
I'll tell you, if there's any validity to the idea that you can get Paul Skeens at a slight bonus discount over the other 2 guys, like Cruz, get Paul Skeens and then use that money to go get some other players in the first 10 rounds. Boy, that doesn't sound bad.
Now, if the Pirates, notoriously the Pirates are cheap, we know this, so that would make sense in that regard. I just don't. Again,
I tell you, not to derail your segment here. I know you got to finish, but the scenario that scares me the most, and the one that I feel like people aren't talking about enough that is a possibility, is the Pirates taking Langford first, because you can argue that he's as good as Cruz. You might be able to get him for less, and then the Nats would probably take Cruz, and then the Tigers are looking at Skeens or Kyle Teal because they're apparently not in on the high school bats. I don't know. I mean, that's the scenario that I'm worried about the most.
yeah,
Skeens all day on that scenario for me.
I don't think they'll do it. I think that it's the principle of it for them. I think we talked, the Cubs, their whole thing was always taking the best college bat available.
Mhm.
And then a couple years ago, the Giants took a whole bunch of college pitchers, and to a man, they've all been a disaster. It's like Will Bednar and Matt Mikulski, and like all of them just were like, oh no. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, back to Raj.
So and then my ugly was MLB and the Pirates this week. It's for today's game that Andrew McCutcheon wore a mask during the game because of the wildfires that are going on in Canada. We mentioned it earlier at the top of the show. And the reason why it's kind of ugly is because they were concerned about their health. And a lot of games in the minor leagues were canceled. Erie canceled, I believe, yesterday. They started the opening series because of the weather. West Michigan, same thing. And so the reason why it's ugly for baseball is I understand why they did it, and they maybe felt like both sides agreed, but it was, I mean, when you have guys saying something like, quote, I don't really know why we're playing. Austin Hedges said that. It seems like it seems like everyone is kind of uneducated on this subject, which is too bad. It's clear as day when you go look at your phone and you check the numbers. Like I told you, don't go outside. I'm not telling you to go They're not telling you to don't go outside. They're not saying it for no reason. We're not any different than any other humans, end quote. He's got a point. So it's just kind of ugly in the sense that, like right now, I'm about to go play softball.
Yeah,
Whatever this
I
is.
thought softball was over. I thought you guys
Summer now.
lost the playoffs.
First game of summer. We did
So
lose the playoffs, and it just continues on. And guess what? I'm playing second base tonight, which I'm not looking forward to because I haven't taken any grounders in a while. So
regular Colt Keith over here.
Yeah, well, I'm batting third. So
Rogelio Hornsby.
No, I did make it. By the way, I think if I'm gonna be braggadocious, I think I probably led the team. No, maybe Greg, our buddy Greg, led the team in hits. Who knows? But either way, I was up there. Just saying. And she goes, "Well, I'll have you play third tonight." I'm like, "No." Second.
Rod Carew.
Yeah, I'm getting mad at Rod Carew.
Yeah, the air quality thing is kind of weird to me right now. Like, I don't ever remember seeing air quality things on my phone. Like, what? Air quality? What? And then the other day, it was normal around here, and then suddenly it got kind of foggy. I'm like, what's going on? I hadn't really noticed, and my son said it smells like hot dogs outside. And yeah, and sure enough, it's these wildfires. But like, I was talking with somebody, and we're like, I'm sure this air quality is probably bad, but any of us who grew up in like the 80s and 90s, it's probably no worse than the restaurants or bars we used to hang out in, where like just full of smoke.
Yeah,
and people older than us would just take a continental flight with a tube full of smoke because all the nervous people smoking. So, I mean, yeah, you don't go out there and huff a bunch of air, but I don't think it's gonna kill you.
Sean, what's going on? He's live in Pittsburgh, so that's kind of fun to get the Pittsburgh perspective. My dad smoked for almost the entire duration of my life, and his Chevy Blazer, he had a 77 K10 Blazer, and that smell of Winston cigarettes, like still in my nostrils. Every time I even look at a pack of Winston cigarettes, I think of that smell. And my dad had this leather package in his truck, right? And the smoke got into the leather, so it smelled like tobacco. That smell of Winston cigarettes, and occasionally he smoked pipe tobacco because he worked in the Chicago plant in the 80s for Ford. So he drives sometimes back. He lived in Indiana, or Illinois rather, and then he'd come back to us on the weekends. So, Blood Right there.
Hey.
Awesome. Thank you, Blood Right.
That ball is gone. Exquisite.
So, on that note, gentlemen, you guys want to continue on? Feel free. But go to the website, TigerMLBReport.com. These two fine gentlemen will take it on from here. I will see you guys on Sunday for the Week 13 wrap-up of the minor league show, including probably more Colt Keith stuff, as Colt Keith had one of the best AAA debuts we've seen in a while. And there's all this
intentional walk.
Yeah, he got intentionally walked. That's how respect for Columbus there. So, but anyways, gentlemen, I'll see you guys later.
Go be clutch,
All right, good luck.
Thanks.
No, so Sean said, man, he managed to get $20 tickets behind home plate today at PNC thanks to the air quality delay. That was Padres, I believe, over the Pirates there.
Yeah.
He-Sung Kim with a home run. Not a bad game, although the Pirates fell, I believe. But...
No, where I grew up in Upper Michigan, we had Canadian wildfire smoke all the time.
Really?
It seemed like most summers, anytime there was a fire up there, we get something. So now that it's more pervasive, I don't know if it gets reported more or if it's. I get a little tired. Al Roker will on today's show, right? He'll highlight about 8 states that's being covered by smoke, and 87 million people are at risk. Oh, yeah. That's a little hyperbole there, Al. But it is bad, and it's definitely put a damper on baseball. Who knew that'd be part of the story of the season?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen games canceled at just about every level because of bad air, which is, like I said, it's something I don't remember ever happening before. I'm sure it's happened, one off here or there, but
we actually had the game I did today. They had the lights on this morning.
Oh, because of that's funny.
Yeah, there's a little haze out there. It wasn't bad, but it was enough to have the lights on.
Yeah. So, we got a couple questions here in
right.
this side. The first one, Christopher Michael Bondi. No, wait. Was it him? Yes. Sorry, it popped down a little bit. Yeah. All right. He said the Rangers. Actually, not him. We'll go with Don Musef. He's right above it. Sorry. first to come, first serve. He said, considering this unworldly seller's market, shouldn't Scott Harris just sell everything other than our young core? It always depends on the return, right? You don't sell everything just to sell it. You sell if it really is a great seller's market. And I don't know if that's necessarily true yet. We've seen one trade, right? The Mets traded Eduardo Escobar, I believe, to the Angels for a couple interesting arms. But yeah, and it just depends on who's going to be out there moving players. Like we keep talking about, like if the White Sox finally decide to fold up shop, they've got a lot of interesting players that might help them rebuild pretty quickly, from Tim Anderson to to Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada. Basically, everybody in that team is tradable. Somehow they're not any good, though.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I think, and I'm trying to be consistent every year. I always think everybody has a price, right? They're not trying to compete to win, really. So yes, they should be looking to move their assets that they can if someone meets their price. Hearing about Erod, it was really important that he had a nice outing tonight. I think they were talking on TV about, does he even need a second one to come back to Detroit? But let's say we talked about this earlier, John and I, last week. Let's just say he does need 2 outings. That's fine. That gets him back just after the All-Star break. That gets him on the mound probably at least 2 to 3 times before the trade deadline. If he looks pretty close to what he looked like back in May before the injury, I think, when John Heyman was talking that there's quote unquote a haul coming for Eduardo Rodriguez, I think it's possible, because I just don't know if there's that many other difference making pitchers out there, depending if Stroman gets put on the market or not. And as I always say, there's a big difference between, is it a guy who is depth to help a team get to October, or is it a guy you're going to give the ball to in October? And that's a big difference in those prices. I think, for instance, Michael Lorenzen is probably a guy you could put on the market, but I don't know if he's going to get a start for a contender in October. But I think Eduardo Rodriguez could, and that should yield a better return in a trade. So we'll see. There's so many moving parts right now for the Tigers. They're nominally in contention, even though they're 10 games under, and they have, guys coming back from injury, and who knows how that's all really going to shake out.
Yeah, there are pieces there to move. It's just a matter of who can you spare, who can you get the most from, who makes the most sense. And go ahead.
Alex Lang. I mean, I would have moved Alex Lang in a heartbeat a month ago. Now I'd still move him, but I don't know who's going to want him. I mean, if you're watching, he's just so inconsistent. He has one outing where it looks like it's coming back a little bit, and then the next outing, he's all over the map, and giving up some contacts and walking people. So I don't still know if that big return is there. I think Foley would probably do better.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. That you got Lang was the AL reliever of the month in May or whatever, and he's had a difficult June. If you're trading him now, you're probably not getting as much as you would have a month ago. I think you're right. So that's probably not a great idea. If they want to move, Jose Cisnero has been quietly pretty good for the last month or so.
No
you're not going to get a ton from him because he's like 34. He's going to be a free agent, but that's a guy sometimes you get an interesting chip for a reliever. See Reese Olson, right?
Yeah.
It just depends on what you do with it. And Christopher's here said the Rangers have a lot of hitting. They don't look that strong on the pitching front. I'm wondering if they might be a good trade partner with the Tigers either at the deadline or in the offseason. I think, yes, they would be. And a name you hear come up a lot is Justin Foscue, who is kind of a second baseman, third baseman. I want to say he was their first round pick or maybe, sandwich round pick a couple years ago. I'm looking
Sounds right
now.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm looking. 14th overall. Jeez. All right. And he's been a quality producer in the minor leagues every season. He's in AAA right now. He's 24. Right now he's hitting 281 with 8 home runs. But listen to this: 14.4% walk rate, 11% strikeout rate.
We like that.
But that sounds like the sort of thing that Scott Harris would like too. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but from watching this series, the Rangers don't have a whole lot of openings on the infield. They've got a starter in the All-Star game at third base, and and young. They've got Corey Seager, who's pretty good. They've got Marcus Semien, who's pretty good. They've got Nate Lowe, who's doing his thing at first base. There's not really room for Justin Foscue. They could try to throw him in the outfield, but they also have Duran out there and Garcia. Like Christopher was saying, there's a lot of bats in that lineup. So Foscue is a guy I would look to get moved.
And then, they lost DeGrom. They definitely would seem to need starting pitching. So if they were looking to get Erod and maybe a relief arm like, Cisnero, could that get you a player like that?
I think for sure. I think if they saw Erod and they said they want him, they would probably be fine with just going straight up with Justin Foscue. Be like, this is probably the best the Tigers are going to get. We'll offer this. And now is that what the Tigers want? Who knows? Maybe they want somebody lower. Maybe they want, who knows what they want. But I do think the Rangers are an interesting trade partner. I keep bringing up the Padres as a team that, for all their investments, they still have a ton of holes in their team. And they could use a little bit of everything the Tigers could offer them. They could use a starter. They could use an extra outfielder like Baddoo or Parker Meadows if the Tigers wanted to trade him. They could use a reliever. They could use all those guys. And they do have some very interesting prospects. They're pretty highly ranked, though. It would be a question of whether or not they would want to part with those guys. But again, you're looking at an infield that doesn't have many spots available to play. You got Machado, you got Bogarts, you got Kim, you've got, Tatis is in the outfield now, but I don't know. I feel like they're an interesting trade partner.
And I've been looking at Arizona. That's the one I've been kind of zeroed in on.
Yeah.
They're kind of contending a year ahead of schedule. So I think they're a little light on pitching to go the distance. And they have the outfielder, Dominic, looks like Calzone, but it's not. Isn't it Dominic?
There's a Dominic Fletcher, the kid from Arizona or Arkansas. Is there a
guy with an Italian name.
Is it Falzone? Falzone?
Regardless, they have an outfielder. They have a stack of outfielders, and there's both on the big league club and in the minor leagues.
Canzone. Dominic Canzone?
Canzone, yeah. I was thinking
it's probably Canzone, but
I was thinking Calzone in my mind. I knew that was wrong. Canzone. That's an interesting player to me, and they really don't have a spot for him either. So they would be dealing from a surplus. So if they want to go the distance this year, they probably got to add some pitching, and that would be an interesting combination of teams.
And the D-backs also, you could also theoretically get some of their young pitching from them too if you wanted, because they've brought up a bunch of young pitchers, but they haven't really stuck.
Right.
Brandon Fod and I think Tommy White's come up a couple times. They have Ryan Nelson and Dre Jamison. They have all these, sort of interesting arms that might be worth, they might look like relievers. You grab them and say, we'll try the Max Scherzer route with you. Yeah. I think they're a team that, but again, there are 2.5 games in first place, I think, in the National League West. Like, you kind of have to go for it, right? You don't have to sell the farm, but are you going to get this opportunity again with the Dodgers? You're probably going to go out and get Ohtani next year.
Exactly.
And the Giants are on the come up again somehow. And so I think, I do think there are some interesting, one of the fun things about having teams that haven't been contenders a lot lately is they might be a little bit more likely to, trade. Now we saw that the Orioles were not that last year. I think Michael Elias is too disciplined but the Marlins are playing pretty well this year. You've got a handful of teams that haven't had success in a while and might be eager to make a run at it. And the Tigers don't have a ton of really great trade chips, but they have enough to get some interesting players in return.
Well, and the thing is that there might be a paucity of sellers, right? So, so if they're one of only 4 or 5 teams that are really putting a lot of players out there, then that's to their benefit.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Scott Harris plays this, because this is his first, trade deadline as the president. Yep. Is he going to jump on early offers? Is he going to try to wait out the market and pull a Michael Fulmer last second deal? Is he? I don't know. Is at the time we thought the Gregory Soto trade made sense in the offseason, and honestly, that's sort of a question I've been asking myself: is if Matt Vierling ends up just being who we're seeing right now, there's like a 110 WRC plus with. He's a good outfielder in the corners, not good in the center. So don't put him in center field.
Yeah.
But a decent, 2-WAR player, is that alone enough for Gregory Soto? If you have a decent 2-WAR, maybe starter, maybe 4th outfielder for 5 years? maybe to me. I mean, the Maton thing has gone so terribly wrong that it's really like if you just did it by war, the Tigers are losing this one.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's why you do a 3-for-1 trade, right? Or 3-for-2, I guess, with Cody Clemens. You give yourself a couple more chances to hit on a player. I don't know. I'm interested to see how Vierling ends out the season.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely the last couple of weeks. I thought he's looked a little bit more impressive. He's making good contact. I like the fact that he runs the bases well.
Cool slide.
Yeah, that was great. I don't know how he put the brakes on and stopped. That to me was the best part was how he held the bag. It was amazing. Quite a play. Yeah, Soto. I looked at Soto recently. It was interesting. He had like 4 outings where he allowed 3 runs or more, and then he had like 24 outings where he spotless. So it's just, and that's why his numbers were ugly, but overall, but when you look at in the details there, he was actually doing pretty well. What could he, if you're removing him at a deadline now, what would that be worth? Hard to say, but if it's straight up Vierling for Soto, would you have done that trade this winter? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. I think you're right. Probably not. Yeah, Soto's FIP is the lowest of his career right now. The ERA is still 4.45 because of those blowups. But yeah, he's striking guys out, and his walk rate's lower than it's been before. So he's been pretty good for them. It's one of those things where like, great, you got Soto on the team this year. Your bullpen's a little bit deeper, but you're still a bad team. But as you said just now, maybe you trade him now and you get a better return. Who knows?
Yeah.
You
can go a lot of different routes on that one.
Yeah, the one other thing I wanted to bring up before we get out of here, I guess, unless people have more questions, is the Tigers are 9 games left until the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. If they went 9-0, they'd be a game under 500, I believe. But they got 3 at Colorado. We've previously discussed how bad they are. Then they come home for 3 against the A's. We discussed how bad they are, and then 3 against the Blue Jays, which a pretty good team this year, but disappointing. Certainly better than the Tigers are. But
where is that series?
Home.
Okay.
They come home for a 6-game homestand.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get what do we think they're going to do in these 9 games, and what would be acceptable and what would be disaster.
I think if the first thing that pops in my mind, I always make people mad. I never think about sweeps. I think win series. I think you sweep somebody, that's a real bonus. But Oakland is bad enough where you probably should consider the idea of sweeping, right? It probably should be on your mind. So if they were to win 2 out of 3 in Colorado, maybe sweep Oakland, and then whether you win 1 or 2 versus the Blue Jays, I mean that would seem to be a pretty good finish to the season. I mean they'd be 6-3 maybe over these last 9. That'd be pretty solid baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think just by the nature of things, it's most likely to be 5-4 in some capacity, or 4-5, which would be kind of a bummer.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think 6-3 is not outrageous, right? You sweep one of these series, or maybe even baseball never works this way, right? They'll lose 3 to Colorado, win 2 of 3 against the A's, and then sweep the Blue Jays, and it's like what 5-4 the hard way, but. Yeah, I just feel like this is a winnable stretch of baseball for the Tigers, I think.
Well, how often in the last 5 years have they played 2 consecutive teams who are worse than them?
That's a great question to look up.
It's probably an opportunity that hasn't presented itself too often.
Yeah, maybe toward the end of 2021, but yeah, that's so yeah, it's on paper you hope that they can pull it off. And we keep talking, like, it just feels like help is almost on the way.
Yeah.
Like you got Riley Green coming back in not too long. He and Badu are going to start taking at bats, I think, tomorrow or this week. So that could help the offense a little bit. Yeah. And then Erod pitched tonight, like you said. Skubal has pitched lately. That's 2 arms that are coming back. You lose Boyd, unfortunately, for the year. You lose Olsen for a little bit, maybe not even a start.
Yeah.
You've gotten rid of Joey Wentz, who put up a 7 ERA or whatever, and you're going to replace him with a Skubal or a Erod. I think the Tigers should be close to full strength, or as close to full strength as they've been all year. here in a week or so. So
Well, and they should have Brisky back, right, for the bullpen.
yeah, he pitched today. He gave him a home run in his one inning, but he's been back pitching fine. Yeah, it's just a matter if they have to pull him off the 60-day injured list and put him on the either the 26 man or option him to Toledo. But yeah, and that there are going to be some moves. We've talked about this before, that they've got a lot of moves to make because there are a lot of players on the 60-day IL that have to come off, which means they have to make room for them on the 40-man, which means, and we've already seen Mashevitz go. I think Zach Lowe will probably be a one and done.
Yeah.
Blair Calvo will probably be gone. Then you're looking at, is this finally it for Jonathan Scope?
Yep.
Do they get rid of Jake Marisnik? People are like, yeah, they just got him for nothing, but he's actually been pretty good for them. Like, he's been useful.
Oh yeah, reasonably. Anyway, yeah. I think though he's the kind of journeyman who he probably would go and probably wouldn't maybe not even get claimed. You might be able to get him to Toledo.
Yeah. Well, and they do have, I believe, Nick Solak still on the 40-man, and he hasn't come up yet. So that's a guy they could just release as well. So there's no shortage of options they could to make room, but there's going to be a lot of movement
for a 35 and 45 ball club. It is an interesting season compared to some of the Drek we've watched the last few years, right? Because they have these players coming back from injury. You just went through all of them. We have the travails of Spencer Torkelson, the nightly thing. We have the final season of Cabrera and this little mini resurgence he's having, which has been really fun to watch. And then you have the front office. We're seeing Scott Harris's first trade deadline, Scott Harris's first draft, how all that's going to come together. They're keeping our interest more than the typical team that's 10 games under 500.
Yeah, it's certainly keeping our interest, but we're kind of hardcore. But yes. I do think that there is enough there to, and yeah, just being able to be within shouting distance in this terrible, terrible division makes things interesting. I think it's kind of fouled up the plans as in as much as they exist for Scott Harris, because I think they do want to try to compete. I mean, I know that AJ Hinch, his goal, and I believe him when he says our goal is to win today's game. I believe that I think that's how you have to manage. You have to have some foresight for planning and stuff like that, but you have to manage every day like you want to win. Now, sometimes you have to give a guy a day off that you don't want to, or something like that you're going to give yourself a little disadvantage. But AJ Hinch isn't out there planning on tanking. He wants to put the best possible roster he can for that day's game. Yep. And I think that in part leads to a lot of this stuff that fans get mad at, the Tyler Nevin over Parker Meadows. It's because they don't need a starter. They want Parker Meadows to come up and be a starter when he does come up, basically. They need a bench bat. They need a right-handed bench bat. And because that's what the team needs to maybe win or split the series at Texas. Now, Nevin got, 3 plate appearances or something like that? They barely used him.
Yes.
But again, so you bring up Parker Meadows and then you play him, you give him 3 plate appearances. Like, and I understand maybe people will say, okay, use Meadows over Marisnik or whatever. But I think this is the decisions that don't make a ton of sense, just holistically or whatever, the big picture. I think when you just focus on the fact that they're trying to win still, even though we think they came into the year with no plans on winning, they're just in a weird spot where I think things will get a lot clearer in about a month once the trade deadline passes, where we go, okay, they are now clearly not really trying. Although at that point, who knows? Maybe they'll be in first place.
Well, that is with all this, with the pitchers that are coming back. If they get some luck with Manning and so on, if they trade Erod, they don't really have, and the division stays as soft as it looks. They've been hanging in there without Erod now. I mean, they weathered the 9-game losing streak. So if they get Manning back from some of the others and they move Erod, what's really changed?
Yeah, how unbelievable is that? This is a team that's 10 games under 500. They had a 9-game losing streak, and they've come out of it, I think, 2 games worse than they were before the 9-game losing streak. They were like 2 games out, and now they're 4 games out. It's just it's bad. I went down to Comerica Park last Sunday, to watch the Twins game. I used my press
Nice.
pass. I got in the press box and did a little schmoozing. Got to talk to Jim Leland briefly. He asked me if I was
Nice.
getting a beer. I was at the drink machine. He was like, "What you getting? You getting a beer there?" I was like, "Nah, I was thinking about that orange watermelon drink." He's like, "Nah, you don't want that." I'm like, "All right, whatever you say, Skip. I'm not getting that." But that game. That was a game they had won.
Mm-hmm.
That was a game that Nick Maton
Threw it away.
I mean, that was one of the more unfortunate things you'll see, where a guy's been playing so poorly and he has such a bad game that it literally cost the team a win, and he's immediately demoted. That's probably the roughest thing that could happen to a professional athlete, aside from like a season-ending injury. And to Maton's credit, he's been down in Toledo. He made an error on the second play of the game the other day, but he had a couple hits, and he'll be back at some point. We know he will,
yeah.
but
Just like Tyler Nevin came back, and Nick Maton too shall rise again.
yeah, it's rough. It's hard unless you're Anthony Misevitz, rest in peace.
Ooh.
But pitchers, like, they just needed a body, and he came up and didn't get the job done, and that may have happened if he had gone out and pitched a scoreless inning too. They may have been planning on
That's very
using
true.
him. So
We gave up all bullets, just like who today gave up a bunch of bullets and didn't really pay for it nearly as bad as he could have.
Mason
Englert, yeah.
Mason
I mean,
Englert.
pretty much every ball was
Well, yeah, we were joking about it because the first one was 103 miles an hour, which was, I think, the home run.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, it was a line out. Second one was 106. That was a home run. Next one was 109, was a line out. And I was like, all right, well, this next one's going to be 112. And it was the littlest like squibber you've ever seen. It was 10 miles an hour off the bat. But yeah, I don't, Mason Englert, we've talked about it before, that he's now, I think, past the 90-day threshold, where if he had to go on the injured list, the Tigers would still be able to keep him. They wouldn't have to give him back to the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't think they're going to manufacture an injury, but if something does happen to him, it wouldn't shock me if they put him on the 60-day, because he's going out there and giving them some innings, but he doesn't really have the stuff. His fastball is just is batting practice pitch for him, and
it really I hate it. It looks amateurish, really, fastball wise. I mean, what I was thinking about him is as a Rule 5 guy, and I know you got to hang on to him, but what's the upside? Let's say they go through all the machinations of holding on to him. Do they really see improvement on the horizon with his fastball? And I'm very much, if you ain't got a fastball, your odds are so low. Where do they see that going? Is it worth going through all the hassle of keeping him around? It probably is in some extent, but because they're not trying to really compete for any world title or anything. But I just don't see the ceiling being very high there.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare him to, like, you compare him to Garrett Hill, who Garrett Hill's hanging on by a thread too, and he's an interesting story as a guy who was basically a command pitcher, and they moved him to the bullpen, and he suddenly throws much harder, but can't throw strikes, the quality strikes. Well, I mean, he throws 4 or 5 miles an hour harder than Mason Englert.
Yep.
And can they get Englert a velo bump? I don't know, because he's pitching out of the bullpen now, and you would think that that's where it would come. If they can't, yeah, I agree. I feel like he's probably going to be kind of AAA roster depth for them next year, which is fine because he's still only 22, 23. He doesn't have any experience in the upper minors really.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough. Like, they brought him in. Yeah, bringing him in a close game, I was like, this doesn't feel good. And sure enough, I think the Rangers tied it or took the lead before Torkelson tied it back, I guess. So
yeah, but you're right. I mean, if they can hang on, find a way to nurse him through this year and keep him in Toledo next year. Now he's a guy you have for depth who actually has big league experience, so you could bring him up for a start if you need him to, and maybe he can give you 5 competitive innings. There's some value there. But it's just, I think people got a little bit excited after those first few outings this spring, and I think now we kind of got a better sense of where he is.
yeah, and teams, this happens every year, especially at spring training. Mayton had an awesome spring too, right? Like, as soon as teams really dig in and are trying to win games, they zero in on your flaws and your faults and exploit them.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens Always happens with players. And,
Now, have you seen Jack O'Loughlin yet?
I have. Yeah, he's
What did you think?
what's that?
What did you think of him?
Yeah, it's he looks to me like a sixth, seventh starter. Like it's a
Mhm.
low 90s fastball, probably sinker. I can't really tell. I haven't looked at I'm sure we have the data. And he's got feel for a couple different breaking balls. I wouldn't say either of them are really more than average. And he's got a changeup too. So he's got like the arsenal. He throws enough strikes. It's just he's a guy that he'd be interesting maybe out of the bullpen. See if he could bump that fastball from 90 to 93 up to maybe like 94, 96. Then you might have some interesting there because he does get pretty good depth on his curveball.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where I think his curveball is better than a slider. And generally speaking, you can do that as a left-handed reliever, I think, with a curveball. But having your best secondary pitch as a curveball doesn't seem to work terribly well for a lot of guys. It's a little bit harder to land for strikes.
Yeah.
If you hang it, it's slower than a slider, so it goes pretty far when people hit it. So, yeah, I mean, he's an interesting arm, but I don't know if I would count on him as being anything more than org fodder still.
Sure.
But he's certainly he's gone farther than I expected. I thought he was going to kind of be a high A ball, maybe double A soldier, and they bumped him up to triple A, and he's held his own. So that's impressive enough on its own regard.
Good for him. And how about this? I mean, you know, obviously where you are you going to be going to see that Toledo lineup? I mean, the Toledo lineup's actually very interesting now.
Yeah, Rogelio even talked about going to Columbus tomorrow night. I don't think we're actually going to do that, but yeah, I mean, you've got this happens every now and then. Where it happened 2 years ago, where suddenly the lineup at Toledo was like, "Hey, we got to go to a lot of these Mud Hens games because that was Green, Torkelson, Kreidler at the time, and they were all having great seasons. Yeah, Cody Clemens was there, Daz Cameron was still there. I think they still had a lot of borderline interesting players.
Lester was hitting a bunch of homers.
Yeah, it was a fun team. They I remember the last game of that season, they all used Cody Clemens' bat. Everybody used Cody, and Torque hit his 30th home run in the season in that game.
Nice.
But yeah, and it's funny. Colt Keith leaves Erie, and you're like, "Oh, poor Erie," and they went out and put up 9 runs. Justice Bigby is hitting, Chris Myers is hitting, Andrew Navigato's still hitting. They still have a good offense. But yeah, Toledo suddenly looks a lot more interesting. Malloy has been there all year, and Meadows has been there, and they're good. But Colt Keith adds a little bit of star power too. So I'm sure we'll head down there for a couple games soon.
That'd be great. Yeah. It was so fun to see him get off to that great start last night. Have you seen what he did tonight at all?
I was watching. I know he got a single in his second at bat. It was a kind of a seeing eye single between first and second, but it was still 96 miles an hour. It was a 96 mile an hour grounder. So let me see. I'm checking now. Checking the box score. Keith Wentz. That was 1 for 4. That was it. 1 for 4. No walks, no strikeouts. Okay. So he's hitting only 400 in AAA now.
Are you on record? Are you on record on a yes or no? Does he see Detroit this year in a uniform?
Boy, that's tough. I have to say yes, I guess, because just how quickly he got up to Toledo. I don't think he's going to put up numbers that are appreciably worse in AAA than he did in AA. And then it's do they heed the fans at some point? Be like, all right, fine, bring him up, have a cool moment. I don't know. He's from all over, right? But I think he was originally from Ohio. So maybe in September, maybe they're playing Cleveland or somebody like that, and they bring him up. I don't know.
Okay.
I would, my initial thought was no. I feel like Scott Harris is going to be stubborn about this, but there's no harm, really. You're going to have to add him to the 40-man after the season anyway, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. No, I guess you don't have to. They don't have to until next year. Because I think this year, that was the 2020 draft. So this year they would have to add Dingler and a couple of, so, boy, I don't know. That's a great answer for me. Yes, no, I don't know.
You've covered all the bases on that one.
Yeah.
I'm a no. I have a hunch that it's April 15th next year. They get him past the service time and get him in.
Well, yeah, that would be interesting. I think if they did it that way, I don't think that he would be qualified to get the draft pick compensation. I think that you have to be on the opening day roster.
Yep. I just don't think you can count on winning the Rookie of the Year.
No, but if you're trying to compete and you think he's your best option, then you could do that. But yeah, you're probably right. They probably will manipulate that. But they could also they could bring him up for a little bit this year and still do both of those things next year.
Yep.
They could bring him up for a little bit this year and then not start him with the team until April, and then you get those weeks back or whatever. But
It's
I don't
true.
know. Yeah, just hope he stays healthy. That's all. Just stay healthy and keep raking, and then
It's
worry
so
about
fun
it.
to watch. I mean, it's really nice. The development, the evolution that he's shown so far, just in a short amount of time and the number of at bats, he's just dominating that AA level, and it gives us hope for building a competitive lineup that we didn't have half a year ago.
If you start stacking hitters in the lineup, you got Riley Green and you got Colt Keith in there, then that makes things look better. And maybe Torkelson figures some things out that suddenly feel better. And you got Andy Ibanez and Zach McKinstry being not complete black holes, and Matt Vierling, and something like Jake Rogers has been playing well. That there are some bats in the lineup, and suddenly you feel better. Yeah, so I
And
don't.
Malloy is starting to hit again.
Yeah, hit a home run today. Hit a home run last week.
Yeah.
He had a couple nice hits yesterday, so that maybe bringing Colt Keith up there or put the charge in him a little bit to say, all right, I gotta win this job. But they've been like, yeah, he didn't. I don't know who played third base yesterday. Or Mayton played third base yesterday. So
Yes.
Malloy was in the outfield and Keith was second base. Today Keith was the DH. They're moving these guys all over the place. So
I'm interested to see him play more and more at second base, because I think that might be the ticket.
yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, and I did forget Kerry Carpenter. Thanks, Sergio. He said, "Don't forget Carpenter." I forgot Carpenter, which was, and people were happy today to see him get a start against a lefty. He did get a hit early, but then later in the game there was a big spot. I think bases loaded, and he struck out against a lefty. But
and he didn't look good doing it.
no, it didn't. It didn't look great. I mean, that was the classic. Everybody was upset because they had the bases loaded, nobody out, right, and strikeout double play.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, good. But well, Joseph, thank you so much, Joseph Schweitzer. We don't have the soundboard to play you the exquisites and all that stuff, but Rogelio, thanks you. And let's see, you got thoughts on the upstart Marlins this year? My secondary closest team, Soler, Arias, pitching, and what are the realistic bats for Erod in your opinions?
well, let me tell you, Yuri Perez, if you're a fan of the Marlins, you just have to be happy as hell every time he takes the mound. And I'm going to be, it's boring to talk about your fantasy. He's on my only fantasy team, right? So I have been watching him. I think I've been watching him anyway, but I've watched him a fair amount. Wow. That looks like some staying power. Really. I mean, the big 6'8" frame, man, if you're in the batter's box against that guy, that has to be almost Randy Johnson. Like when he finishes, like he's basically handing the ball to you. So that to me is the most exciting part about the Marlins.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just got Jazz Chisholm back from his injury. They have was it Brian De La Cruz, who's turned out to be a pretty good asset for him in the outfield.
Yep.
Yeah, they built something fun there, and what they did is what people always say, like they're like, hey, shouldn't this team do that? They've got pitching, and shouldn't they trade for a bat? It always feels easier said than done, but they went out and did it. And yeah, Arias has been spectacular for him. He's making a run at 400. He's kind of a throwback player, right? He's not hitting the ball very hard or very far, but he knows how to get hits. And it's fun to see the Marlins. Like I said earlier, it's fun to see some of these teams competing that have been doorsteps or doormats, I guess it would be for years. And
no question.
yeah, I would like to see them make a run if they can. I still don't know if the offense overall is going to be enough, but they do have more pitching coming back too. They have Max Meyer coming back eventually. I don't know how far away he is, but
so for as far as Erod there, I mean, Erod, if he's pitching well, it makes sense for everybody, right? I mean, he just does.
Yeah.
But for that team, for instance, I don't know what their budget looks like, but if they're pretty confident that he's going to opt out, I mean, and they can get a rental price, I mean, that does make a lot of sense. They're not making a future commitment to anything.
Yeah, I mean, that is one the aspect of the Eduardo Rodriguez trade market that is kind of interesting, is there, because he's going to probably opt out, like you said, that you're looking at like a $6 million salary you owe him. And if the Tigers would be willing to eat that, maybe you can get something even more, and it opens up your options more. But
are you hearing that, Chris Ilitch? Are you hearing that?
I get the feeling that Chris Ilitch doesn't like to eat contracts. I don't think we seen it yet. I was thinking today. I don't think since he took over have they bought anybody out basically.
He doesn't understand the sunk cost theory.
Yeah, yeah, and that's Jonathan Scope is still out there, and it's I never had an issue with Jonathan Scope other than he just hasn't played very well, and he like Javi Baez has just completely lost all power.
Yep.
I don't know what happened with what kind of muscle milk the guys are drinking, but
yeah,
but yeah, you said that they have plenty of opportunity to eat his contract and send him away, and they haven't. It's $7 million, which is a lot of money, but not a lot to a Major League Baseball owner at all. Teams, what did the Diamondbacks got rid of Madison Bumgarner and ate like $40 million or something close to that? I thought it was So I don't know.
A lot of money, and that's just it gets a little depressing knowing about Javi Baez's deal and the fact that I had this hunch that they'll use it as an excuse. They don't have to. It's not that big of a deal. They could carry that dead money and still do anything they need to do. But, the word will always leak out. Yeah, well, we got this dead money here. And,
4 more years.
4 years.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I think that's about wraps it up for tonight, unless we want to discuss the draft. I don't know if there's anything new more talking about the draft.
Well, there's a lot of mock drafts coming out, and it's always fun. It's the best time of year. If you love the draft, mock draft every day, something from somebody. Always just looking for those whispers out there. I was listening to the Pipeline podcast today, and I think they're getting whispers that Skeens to Pittsburgh. I know Roger was saying the opposite. I think they're seeing Skeens to Pittsburgh. I really do.
Yeah, I get the feeling too. It wasn't just Keith Law. Kylie McDaniel, I think, had Skeens going to Pittsburgh. I think those guys did too. Yeah, I think. But again, this could just be this week's whispers, and next week it could be like, oh, it's Max Clark for sure, or something like that. But
I just hope the Tigers. I'm usually fine with the whole idea of pay less and spend more on more guys. I get it. But, this for so long has been thought to be a 5-man draft, 5 top talents, and to walk away with not one of them would be a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, well, and I keep seeing Langford mocked to the Tigers for the most part, which is
That's fine.
Good. That's the guy I want. I think he's very good. I think there's a chance that he ends up better than Cruz. Hits for more power maybe, but yeah, it does feel like, oh boy, they better not, like, if Langford's there and they go Kyle Teal or something like that to save money, that's going to be tough to stomach. But like, that's the thing, like their pick value at number 3 is $8.3 million plus whatever 5% overage overall, so probably 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more than the highest draft bonus ever so far, which is Torkelson. I think maybe he was 8.4 or something like that. They can save money. They can get whoever at maybe Langford probably for $8 million, save up $400,000. They have to pick 37 and 45. They have enough money to play around and get another high-ranking prep kid or whatever to fall to them if they want. And they probably should, because I think that's one of the strengths of this class is particularly the prep infielders.
Right.
There are an awful lot of them in that second and third round range or sandwich round range, and I think they should come out of this draft with one of them. But we'll see. Maybe they go heavy college bats or something like that. But
college arms.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Ty Floyd. Have you seen Ty Floyd?
So here's the thing. It's funny. I used to do full mock drafts for the Tigers every year, and Ty Floyd was a guy that I had heading to them because he was going to go off to LSU. And he was a guy who's kind of, he's been okay throughout college, never really put it all together until the College World Series when he struck out 17 in a game against Florida. Like, what in the world just happened? And I think the problem with him has usually been his breaking ball. I think the fastball is fine. The changeup's okay, but he's never had a consistent breaking ball. And that's one thing that I'm not quite sure if teams have really cracked that code yet. We've seen teams figure out how to make guys throw harder. We've seen teams figure out how to make guys throw more strikes even, which I thought would always be harder, but that the Dodgers seem to have no problem doing that, and the Mariners don't either. But I don't know if you can really teach a guy to spin the ball. I think that's Bo Brisky's main issue. I think that's why he's not a starter. He just he can't quite spin a good slider or a curveball. But yeah, if you want to take a run on that guy in the second round or third round or even like, sure. I talked before about like Brandon Sproat from Florida. Now he went out and threw 130 pitches in 4 innings or whatever, but he throws 100. He's got 3 good secondary pitches. It's a flat fastball or whatever that hitters see. I think you might be able to work around that a little bit. There are some decent college arms that should be available in the second round.
I was looking at Whitman from Kent State, Joe Whitman.
Yeah, he's one of the big movers heading into the draft. Really interesting story too.
Very lived in Europe for a good chunk of his childhood and didn't play ball and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, very interesting.
Transferred from Purdue to Kent State, and suddenly his draft stock blew up, and then went out and had a great start in the Cape Cod League, and I think basically shut it down. Like, yeah, that's all that people need to see.
So he might not last until the Tigers' second pick.
No, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if he goes in the first round. For a team that wants a good college starter, he seems to have really good slider command, and it's a low 90s fastball up to mid 90s, I think. So teams kind of, they act weird a little bit on draft day, particularly in that 20 to 30 range. Sometimes they just go, you know what, let's just get so we're in a spot now where a college pitcher might make more sense for us where we are.
Right. Well, we'll see. It's going to be fun in the next 10 days. Good times. I'm coming. I mean, I'll be honest to the folks out there listening. I've been on Langford for a long time too. Paul Skeens is more and more the way to go to me. He got an 80 fastball. Everything else he throws is 60 and 70. He is, to me, not quite twice the guy Casey Mize was, but significantly better prospect pre-draft from what we've seen at the college level to Casey Mize. He's just a big, put-together dude who I think if anyone's going to stay healthy, he might. And I think he could really change the whole organization.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to dream too hard to see that guy as the anchor of your rotation for the next 6-7 years, plus however much you want to sign him to. Like you said, great fastball. I don't know if it has like elite fastball shape or full, spin or whatever, but it's 98 to 101. You can figure out how to make that work. They did it with Hunter Green. His
control of it.
Yeah, and he's got plus control, plus command, I would even say, despite throwing that hard, with a delivery that does not look effortful to me at all. Like it looks like he's really under control. We saw that he flashed the changeup that looked like a plus pitch. So, yeah, I wouldn't hate it because he's damn good. Like no matter who they take. We were messing around with this a little bit. Like I feel like the top 3. Cruz, Skeens, and Langford, I think they're all top 10 prospects in baseball immediately. Maybe top 15 if you if you feel like Langford's just going to play left field and he's not going to provide defensive value or something. But yeah, you're going to come out of this draft. Hopefully, as you said, there are 5 great players. If they don't take one of the 5, you're going to get a top 50 prospect in baseball and possibly top 10. And
there's an argument to be made. Skeens would be the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much longer Yuri Perez is considered a prospect. I think he might be 2 years younger than Skeens, or at least a year younger.
Yeah.
And there are some damn good pitching prospects.
Oh, sure.
In baseball, like Gavin Williams is really good, and Andrew Abbott. I don't know if he still counts or not. Probably not, but yeah, you could. I don't know who you'd rank up above him right now.
Put it this way, he's on the short list.
Yeah, for sure. So, as you said, it's gonna be really fun. We've been doing a whole bunch of mock drafts in the Discord. I asked a bunch of people to join, and we ended up getting about 6 volunteers, and so we've run through. We're in our 3rd kind of mock draft now. We did a straight mock draft the first round, just like here's everybody gets 4 teams. Here's who you're picking, and that worked out pretty. It was chalk. It was Cruz, Skeens, Langford. I think I went Teal to the Twins at 5.
Okay.
Just because I thought they might want a college bat. Then we did the one I kind of like where we keep score. I don't know if we did this one with you once when we're at MCB, but you're trying to keep score basically. It's a snake draft that everybody gets to pick, and you just try to get a guy who goes higher in real life than he does in the mock.
Yes.
So if I'm picking fifth and I pick Max Clark and he goes first, I get like 4 points, right? And you try to end up having the best score at the end. It's just a kind of a fun way to keep score.
That is fun.
And it's mostly luck. And then we're fine. We're doing the one where we just take all Tigers picks through the 5th round. So, pick 1, 37, 45, 76. And
Sure.
So getting real draft nerdy in my neck of the woods. So
Good
I hope
times. I like it.
you guys are doing that too. So anyway, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us on Motor City Metrics tonight. We're down John for his romantic life, which is, as we said, sometimes you got to see about a girl.
That's right. We're
And-
living
and Rogers-
vicariously through JFK.
And Rod's got to go play softball. But thanks everybody for joining us. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, right? I think people know what to do. If you could leave a review and say we're good, we'd appreciate it. If you have some constructive criticism, we'd like that too. But other than that, yeah, we'll see you possibly Sunday night for the minor league show, and then maybe Monday night. I don't know. We'll certainly let you know. But everybody have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Actually, you know what? I can't stop the show. I don't know how to. I don't. That's funny.
We are never leaving.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to stop the show on this laptop. Would have to log into my other show and stop it, or my other laptop. I suppose I could just close the window, and if you close your window, then it will end that way.
I like it.
We'll give that a try. All right. See you for real, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye bye.